Welcome to Entrepreneurs, where we talk directly with the founders of Australian businesses. I'm Holly Stevens, and Entrepreneurs starts now.
This is Entrepreneurs.
Welcome to Entrepreneurs, where we talk directly to the founders of Australian businesses, from startups and small business owners to the icons of industry. With me tonight, a panel of tech-savvy entrepreneurs who will help us decode the way blockchain technology and cryptocurrency are being used in business. We have Rob Morris, a technologist and blockchain expert. Joining him is the founder of Finder.com and Hivex, Fred Chibester, and Bonnie Yu, co-founder of Consulier and head of APAC region for Tycoon. Rob, I'm going to start with you, if that's all right.
No worries.
So you're an investor in blockchain technology and cryptocurrency.
Yes.
And you've also helped with a number of Australian startups with implementation of blockchain. But it'll be really good to know from you, what's the difference between blockchain and cryptocurrency for all those newbies out there?
Yep. So cryptocurrency is just an implementation of blockchain technology. So you can use blockchain for a wide variety of things. You can use it to build distributed databases, to capture assets in a tradable way. So cryptocurrencies are just a way of exchanging value using a blockchain database.
So they differ in quite a big way, but they're bundled together. What are some of the misconceptions around blockchain and crypto?
So blockchain-like technologies have been getting used for quite a long time, and some people might refer to something called a distributed ledger technology. So blockchain is basically just like a useful technology. Cryptocurrencies are a whole different thing, as you've seen with the rise of cryptocurrency markets. People can trade things that they couldn't before.
Yeah, but it's so interesting what blockchain and crypto is currently doing, but I know for someone like you, Fred, and you're the founder of Finder.com, like the Australian success story, I suppose, but you've actually transitioned some of the reporting from Finder.com into Crypto Finder. Why did you choose to do that?
Yes, we try and compare everything. We're obviously, and cryptocurrency was this massive thing coming on August, September. So we wanted to help people compare those things, make an informed decision. So we saw a quick opportunity and we started writing about it, and people wanted to compare where to buy things on exchanges and different wallets and different things to mine. So we wrote about that and people love it.
I love Crypto Finder, it's so good, and the Daily Exchange as well, which is your YouTube channel you have as well, which is always pretty good to look at for amusement and very good.
We need a bit of a bell here, Holly.
We need the bell. We do need it here, Fred. You should have brought it on with you. If no one knows what that is, they should check it out. But also, what is Hivex?
So Hivex is really an opportunity and a response to a fast, convenient way without withdrawal limits to buy and sell cryptocurrency, right? So it's like a stockbroker for crypto. So you can buy, sell Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, whatever it may be. We'll make you a price, buy or sell. And we've traded about over $50 million of cryptocurrency now.
Wow, that is a lot of money. There's a lot on there. And Bonnie, you've made the transition from, like a typical law background, and now you've gone into blockchain.
Yeah.
So how is that transition, and why did you even start to do that?
Yeah, so I really first learned about blockchain when I was working in big law in Silicon Valley, and actually some of the clients there were using Bitcoins for remittance, and so that was really interesting because it was low cost and instant, and so I thought, wow, that is a real value unlock. And so I stayed really interested, and last year I made the leap to found Consulier, which is a blockchain consulting company in strategy, legal and technology. Really, really loved it, and just really enjoying the journey so far.
And what are some of the biggest use cases you're seeing for blockchain and cryptocurrency at the moment?
Yes, I think that it really traverses so many industry, but in particular the most amount of activity and the most interesting activity that's really happening, I think, is in the remittance payment space and also in the supply chain space. So in the remittance place, you really have big banks looking into how they can adopt blockchain technology. And in fact, you've got MasterCard, you've got Visas looking as to how they can redevelop the SWIFT system, and you've got, then companies like Ripple that's actually working with a dozen banks trying to solve really legacy issues. And so I find that very interesting. And also in the supply chain space, then you have big corporations like De Beers, which is really trying to track the provenance of goods and services, and so I actually find that fascinating.
It's a great use case as well for how blockchain can be used in supply chain.
Absolutely.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
But do you actually think that, you're, with this law background as well that you have, do you think that with all this technology coming out, or blockchain, all these different types of cryptocurrency, do you think regulation can catch up quick enough? Yeah, so it's definitely an interesting question, because regulation is always inherently lagging behind. And so I think that what's more interesting, I guess, for companies, and the implication of that is that they'd rather go offshore to more favourable jurisdictions, which are more receptive towards cryptocurrencies and blockchain. And so you see a lot of companies now going to Bermuda or Zug in Switzerland and trying to establish space there. In fact, it was really interesting. The other day I was talking to a couple of, I was giving a presentation, and after the presentation, actually, an ASIC regulator, who was quite senior and who I won't name, came up and said, this is interesting what you guys are doing. Perhaps you should come and see me. So I think it's really that, they are very interested to know what's happening, but they still have to catch up with fully appreciating how to regulate these new asset classes. Absolutely. I think we're just going to see more regulation coming, especially maybe from what the US are doing. I suppose, Fred, you've been in the US seeing all these things as well, and you've been to current conferences as well in this space. But guys, I suppose it's a really interesting place to talk is, in December and January, like I've just gone, we saw the markets soaring. And it was a huge time for people that were buying at that time. And then they absolutely tanked. Rob, do you think we can predict what's going to happen in the next kind of year or 2 years with blockchain and crypto?
I think there are a lot of people who have an idea of what they think is going to happen. But I mean, when you say predict the market, it's sort of like saying predict the future. So it's never going to be a perfect prediction. Some people are doing some really smart stuff there. And I've heard a lot of different opinions. I've heard some very sophisticated people who think that the market will recover not for quite a long time. I've heard other people that think that it might happen in the shorter term. So nobody really knows exactly, but there are a lot of very useful tools that can help to give an idea of when it is starting to happen, and give people some forward warning of that. And do you think with, as we hopefully can start to predict it a little bit more, do you think that will impact on entrepreneurs actually implementing this into their business as well? So I think the market is not necessarily directly linked to how much entrepreneurs are actually using the technology, and how they're using it for funding. So a lot of people would think that the amount of token raises, which some people call ICOs, that those have reduced. But in actual fact, if you remove some of the larger token raises, the activity's continued on through this whole last 9 months when the market's been going down. What we are seeing is that companies are moving back towards an equity raise model at the moment, and that investors are looking for that instead of doing these token raises only. But the space is just really rapidly changing all of the time, to the point that even like really experienced investors are seeing new models emerging every month or two. I suppose it's just going to keep on emerging, this sector, completely. For some time. I think we're going to see so many exciting businesses actually come from this sector, which I don't think we've seen before. So it's going to be super exciting. So I'm going to cut to, coming after the break, we dive deeper into how blockchain and crypto are being used. We'll talk a little bit more about ICOs as well, as Rob mentioned. So don't go anywhere.
You're watching Entrepreneurs. Welcome back to Entrepreneurs.
Welcome back to Entrepreneurs. We are talking to an expert panel about blockchain and cryptocurrency. The technology is starting to go more mainstream, but how real is the opportunity, and how many business owners really understand what it is? So I'm going to talk to Rob about this area as the expert and the technologist in this area. So we keep hearing the buzzword of blockchain. And do you think, from working with all these different companies in this area and helping different, like maybe corporates as well at some point, do you think it's actually needed?
This is quite a controversial subject. There's a lot of people that say, oh, you don't need blockchain for that. And I think that at a technical level, you don't need blockchain for many things. But what blockchain is cheap trust. And so if you think about what that actually means, it's a really big thing. So if you imagine that you're trading shares on the stock market, then at the moment you need a securities lawyer, and they need to do a lot of paperwork, and they create this big paper trail that means that people can actually go back and audit what had happened. So what blockchain would allow you to do is to, without relying on trusting a central party, to be able to bundle that up and have it sort of happen automatically without the lawyer needing to do a bunch of stuff. And you can expand that out to all sorts of things, from physical assets like gold, to say, here's a token that represents a piece of gold, but it can be verified and audited in real time. And then we can attach these behaviors to them, which are called smart contracts, that can be inspected by people. So that all gets a little bit complicated, but the easy way to think about blockchain is a little bit like the emergence of the internet. So what the internet did is it removed middlemen. We used to have to pick up the phone and call people and say, hey Bob, can you help me find a builder? Now we can just hop online and we can look at a website. So blockchain is like another revolution that's going to be replacing business models for the next 20 years. And what it does is it makes it easy to have cheap trust and decentralized systems with no one controlling it. And so what that's going to produce is low rent seeking platforms. So where right now you might have an Uber and they make money out of connecting a driver and somebody who wants to go somewhere, you might have a platform where nobody makes money out of it. And that's going to be a really huge thing. It's going to change a lot of business models. And so that's what entrepreneurs love, right?
Yeah, it's cutting out all the middlemen. It's going to be pretty exciting to see more companies go into this space and see actually how some of them may use blockchain technology and apply it, or actually just build a blockchain project altogether, which I think is a really nice segue, Fred, to talk to you around. Blockchain companies are now raising through ICOs. But for those out there, what even is an ICO? Yeah,
so you think about ICOs. I think they started off being quite simple in terms of it's an initial coin offering. So you have an IPO with an initial public offering where you issue shares, but I think there was a bit of confusion about what these ICOs were, and they became a bit treacherous, to be honest. So a lot of these coins, these utility tokens, unfortunately, I've seen massive 90 to 95% drops. A lot of people have lost a lot of money through that. And what we're seeing now is we've got projects which have done no ICO. So things like Ravencoin, which had no ICO recently, it's had a massive run recently. You've got, obviously, Bitcoin didn't have an ICO either. So these community-funded projects, community-driven ones, are starting to really shine through because they're all about development and building stuff, right? And then the next thing I think we're seeing is this, and this is another bit of a term, but is STO, which is a security token offering. And I think if I wouldn't this is not financial advice, by the way.
Never financial advice. No financial advice, ever.
I've got to be really careful. No financial.
Another thing from the show.
We can't do, ICOs are really, I guess, that treacherous investment. I think we should be really, really careful about if it's, but a security token offering really is about putting an asset or some sort of equity behind. And so there's, for example, there's one right now called Meld in Melbourne, which is the Melbourne Mint. It's putting gold on the blockchain.
Amazing. We're seeing a number of people actually doing that and putting that as like a new technology of how to actually value their assets and things like that. So I think it's really interesting of what you can do in this space. Do you think they're still a good investment? And do you, Rob? What do you think? I'll go to you first, Fred.
I am avoiding a lot of ICOs right now that are sort of utility tokens. Again, not financial advice.
No financial advice.
But I think there's a lot of very interesting coins out there that are, again, community-driven projects. Projects which are built with no ICO, but you can buy into those coins, right? And there are other projects, there are other ICOs out there that have probably taken a lot of time, and they may get up still. I think when it comes to the real core, but this security token offering wave that's coming, I think is incredible. And we've got the multi-digital exchange, Rick Klink, who's really leading that. Australian again, doing some incredible stuff. And I think that's going to be a real change in how assets are traded and how they're sort of combined together. Yeah. But I would watch out for a lot of ICOs.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think, Rob, in terms of you must see the technology and the underlying technology as, you know, that might be interesting to invest in. What do you think in terms of an investment?
Yeah, look, I mean, I agree with Fred around ICOs. I think that they're a very risky investment, and that was just a very early vehicle in the industry. And so it was just a little bit like, you know, trusting someone, a stranger on the internet that you'd never met before with your money is literally how it works. And so obviously that's going to end in tears some of the time. And there was this exuberant early phase where a lot of people were starting to make money as all of these tokens came onto the market. So it's a really good thing that we're entering a more regulated phase because that's going to help protect people and give them confidence. And so that's why we're seeing the rise of security tokens. I think we're going to see the rise of technology that allows us to do trusted token offerings as well, where companies operate more like a startup that says this is what we're going to do and then gets held accountable to that. And there's a good local Australian company who's working on that.
And I think it's really nice to see so many Australian companies actually do this as well. But Bonnie, I'm going to turn to you and say, like, what should you even be doing before you even start thinking about blockchain and ICO? Because you work a lot with strategy and all that sort of area. So what should they do before that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rob is spot on in saying that, well, you know, is the first thing you have to ask, which a lot of people do, is, well, do you actually need a blockchain? And I think the second question is when we work a lot with other companies, which is to say, well, is the benefit of using blockchain actually significant or marginal? And in other words, it is to say, will this blockchain delivery actually give a healthy ROI for the company? Because sometimes when we work with companies, and I think the board feedback is actually that, well, perhaps we don't see an immediate gain. So I think it's very much a long-term technology, and you do have to adopt a more long-term view when you see whether or not you actually need blockchain for your business.
I think it's the same with any startup as well. It's probably the same mentality you should really be having as well. Yeah. Guys, do you think paper money will still be used? What about you, Bonnie? Say in 2030, will paper money still be used?
Right. I hope not, because I actually don't carry much paper money with me, and sometimes it's a hassle when they say cash only.
Yeah. What about you?
I think that it's going to be very hard to remove paper money for a very long period of time. Like, we still use gold. It was a very stable form of currency.
Yeah.
I have a very strong prediction around when digital currencies will be, and I'm sort of just started talking about this recently. It's a very visionary concept, but I believe with the advent of basically virtual reality, the further we go into virtual reality, like we sit and we look at our phones like 60% of the time, like it's insane, right? We're pretty much living in the Matrix.
Yeah.
And the further and further we go into that, paper money will be almost further and further obsolete, and digital currencies, I think, will be the norm.
Yeah.
So I think there's sort of some sort of trigger point or changeover point there.
Absolutely. I think we've had such a good discussion. Thank you so much all for coming on the show. It's been great to talk all about blockchain and cryptocurrency. After the break, we have Katrina Dow, founder of Miko, which is helping consumers negotiate how companies use their data and their identity.
You're watching Entrepreneurs. Welcome back to Entrepreneurs.
Welcome back to Entrepreneurs. I'm joined by Katrina Dow, founder of Miko. Katrina began Miko journey back in 2012. It's now a pretty big global business. What's exciting is she's giving consumers back the power of their own data and how digital identity and how companies use it. Katrina, hi.
Hi.
It's so good to have you here
Thank
and have
you
you
for
on the
having me.
show. Can you talk us through the problem that Miko is trying to solve?
Sure. So right now, every one of us has a digital twin. You imagine a baby born today, everything they do, they touch, they say, we will create some kind of data. And so whether or not that's enrolling in school or their patient records, one of the things that we wanted to do was set out on a mission to help everyone on the planet get equity and value for that data.
And how does it actually work?
So how it actually works is we create something we call the API of me. So we see the future of data is personalization, personalized medicine, personalized money, personalized health, but that's not going to be possible unless you and I can actually be part of the value chain. So what we need is a way to be able to bring our data and our identity and actually exchange it with the people and organizations we trust for better outcomes and more personalized services.
It's so interesting what you're doing. But I want to know how you even got started, because you've got a traditional finance background.
Yes, that's right.
How and why did you even start Miko?
So I used to work in financial services around strategy and product development. And one of the things that I noticed over and over is that we would create products that weren't really meeting the needs of everyday people, in particular at the time they needed them most. So whilst we might create a financial product, whether or not it's an insurance product or a mortgage, the idea that we could put it onto a marketing campaign that everyone would want in September or in July is kind of crazy, because life doesn't work that way. So what we needed was to be available with the right things at the right time, and a big part of that was getting access to data and getting the right data at the right time in order to deliver the right kind of services to people.
It's so interesting what you're doing. So you base a lot of time in the UK, right?
That's right.
So how's that split? Like,
at the moment, it's a little too crazy. I split my time every month between London and Sydney at the moment.
that is one crazy journey.
Yeah. Qantas loves me. Well, they should love me.
So you must be seeing a different regulation and different privacy and data regulation in this area. How does it differ in Europe to Australia? And do you think Australia is going to move that way?
Well, there are two big changes that have happened in Europe this year. In May, there was the introduction of the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR.
Yeah, we all know that one.
Exactly. And the other is the open banking regime, which we'll see here in Australia next year. And basically, those things are designed from a European point of view to give you and I greater access to our data, more transparency, and the ability for us to use our information, our data in a more personalised and useful way. So we'll start to see those changes in Australia. Australia already has very good privacy regulation, but most people don't actually understand what their digital rights are, or even understand how they could use their data in a more effective way to get a better outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this whole space is really interesting, especially when you start to put it onto the blockchain, which then leads us into, how are you actually using the blockchain?
Okay, so we're using the blockchain for two things, and I think the panel earlier on the show explained a lot of the benefits and some of the changes of how this technology is starting to evolve. So we focus on two things: governance and smart contracts. So the important thing about governance is one of the changes that we're starting to see with distributed ledger and blockchain is greater transparency. Being able to trust or have more transparency around how information is used, or how products and services actually come together to create a value chain. That's the first part. The second part is smart contracts. And so what we see is the ability to bring the business logic directly to your data to enable us to do things like shop around for a product, like a mortgage, without giving all the information away. And we break that down into three simple steps: drive by, tell me more, transact. So in a drive-by, think of the least amount of information that you would need to share in order to see whether or not there is interest. Tell me more, maybe sharing a little more information, maybe to compare the price of something or see whether you're eligible. And then if you think there is value, then transact. That lowers the cost and the compliance for the organisation offering the product, but more importantly, it empowers you and I to decide whether or not something is right for us before making that decision.
Absolutely. And I think you're doing so much in this blockchain space, but we've seen multiple blockchain projects as well. Do you think blockchain is still a good and a bad thing?
Look, tech is neutral. It's not good or bad. And it's really interesting, Apple CEO Tim Cook, just in the last few days, has been talking to the European Parliament around what's happening with personal data, what's happening across the technology landscape. And he's reminding us all that at the end of the day, it comes down to ethics. It's what we design. It's what we design into those smart contracts. It's not that technology wakes up in the morning and decides that it's going to behave in one way or another. That's really our decision, and that's a really important part of why you and I need to have these increased digital rights so that we can decide how our information is used and therefore the way our technology responds to the needs for you and I in a personalised way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you look 10 years into the future, Katrina, are there some things that you'll think, we look back in 10 years and say, why were we even doing that?
Yeah, I think the thing, if I think a generation ahead, I think they'll look back and they'll say, Mum and Dad, I can't believe that you gave all that value away for free. You know, I can't believe that you were using your information or your data in a way that wasn't actually creating a better return.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think putting consumers back in control of their data is so important. So thank you so much for being on the show, Katrina. It's been great to chat to you.
Thank you.
That's all, folks. Next week, we analyse the trends that are changing education and meet the founders who are challenging the way kids, students and adults learn. That's with Jack Delosa. Don't miss it. You can watch us at any time on Foxtel Go and on the catch-up section of yourmoney.com.au. I'm Holly Stevens. Good night.